Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm here to look back at Newcastle United's 4-1 victory at Burnley yesterday. If you're wondering why you've seen a few different backdrops from me in the last few videos, it's because I've got a new light and a new mic, so I've been able to free up a little bit more of my office. And because the sun's out, this seemed like a better option for me. But if you like this sort of viewpoint, then do let me know in the comments and I can make more videos looking like this, but also off the back of my desk as well. Newcastle now in the driving seat for the top six again as it stands, with Manchester United going to Crystal Palace on Monday night. What a performance it was in the end, what a result it was in the end. It wasn't quite as straightforward as that in the first 15 minutes. They only started quick as you would expect them to, given that they knew that victory would really put the cat amongst the pigeons in the relegation battle. Now it looks unlikely that they'll stay up, especially considering that Nottingham Forest were also victorious at Bramall Lane yesterday against Sheffield United. The midfield was much more lively. Again, Longstaff getting on the score sheet will do his performance as well of good. 4 goals in 32 games is now his best season. Obviously, the story coming out of the game will be the Callum Wilson going ahead of Peter Beardsley and getting his 48th Premier League goal for Newcastle. He's only behind Alan Shearer by about 101 goals. So if he stays for another 10 years, perhaps he'll have a good go at it. Also, Alexander Isak will come in the first place. Scored 20 Premier League goals since Shearer as well for Newcastle. And that in itself, to compare them, to have Alan Shearer's name coming up in records and in comparison to what players are doing, is just exactly what you need to know about how good this season's been in terms of goal scoring. Newcastle have now got 78 goals, which is their best performance in a 38-game season. They've won 5 games out of the last 8 with only 2 defeats as well since the start of March. This is Newcastle United in spring, as it was last year when they rallied towards the top 4. I mentioned in the preview, Wilson and Isak can play together, and alternatively, and when they're both fit, that's the driving force behind Newcastle playing well. I think that's the case as well here. Having said that, Anthony Gordon has double figures for goals and assists as well. So, this is a team that's playing with freedom, that's playing with energy, that's playing with everything that we wanted to see from them all season, and has, it's been heavily criticised at times for performances. Obviously, their away form's been patchy, and there were glimpses of that in the first half to show why that has been. But overall, this has been a fantastic. This looks like it could be a fantastic end to what is a difficult season, and maybe that has to, maybe that proves that we've all been a little bit wrong about this season. Everyone's known about the injuries, and everyone's got tired of talking about the injuries. But we've seen what Newcastle can do when everyone's fit. They had Joe Linton back on the bench yesterday. They had Miguel Almiron on the bench yesterday, and Nick Pope on the bench yesterday. The squad looked a lot stronger as a whole, and the team just played with a lot of confidence. And if you look at this season, and we look at honest conversations that have been had on this channel, on the True Faith podcast that I appear on as well, and just general discourse across Twitter and across the Newcastle fan base, Eddie Howe's position has not been outwardly questioned, but there has been, that it has been a topic of conversation that should he be under pressure if results don't improve? Should Newcastle look to the future, look to change things? What's going on with the recruitment? Lots of questions that have been asked, but there's always been a feeling that if everything came together with injuries and everything came together at the right time, then Newcastle would show that they are still a very, very good side, and that's what they're doing right now. So, if they're 9 points off Aston Villa as we speak right now. Obviously, Aston Villa are playing later today, as I'm recording this on Sunday morning. Given how little momentum they've had all season, and given how many issues they've had to deal with, both tactically at times, but also injuries, mainly coming from the injury issues of not having Joe Linton, not having Joe Willock, as I've mentioned on so many videos before that, and how that's affected the defence. Now the defence is a patch-up job because there's no Sven Botman, there was no Fabian Schär yesterday. It was Crafton, Dan Burn at centre-back, with Livramento and Hall as the full-backs, no Trippier. So there's always been something to deal with all season. But when the foundations are there, Newcastle can compete with anybody. If Newcastle had beaten Luton and beaten Forest, held on at Wolves or held on at West Ham, that's the difference at the moment to Aston Villa. Newcastle haven't really dropped their standards too much despite everything, and I think that says quite a lot about where the team has been this season, but also the mentality and the tactical nous of Eddie Howe, and the understanding that when they're at their best, very few teams can deal with them. I think Anthony Gordon, for me, has been player of the season this year, given where he came from when he arrived, in terms of the view of the fans when he arrived for 45 million. That was a lot of money. He wasn't particularly popular, because of the bust up he had with the players while he was at Everton. There was a lot to prove. Then obviously came that incident at Brentford when he had a go at Eddie Howe when he was brought off. There was obviously a lot more to come from him, but he was at a very difficult point. He had a very difficult start, and that needs to be mentioned as well. The interview he gave after Chelsea in the final day of the season after getting his first goal was really, really sort of interesting to see where his mindset was. Then he went and starred at the under-21 Euros last summer, player of the tournament. He's never really looked back from there. For me, he's been phenomenal. He's going to be right in the conversation for the England squad, and actually have a piece on Anthony Gordon coming out on the BBC Sport website before the trip to Manchester United, which I might be at as well. I've mentioned on this channel before how Newcastle play when Bruno Guimaraes, Anthony Gordon and Alexander Isak all play well. They all scored or assisted a goal yesterday. It's now 12 games when Bruno scored that Newcastle have won. And that's a stat that really gives an insight into what Newcastle need to look at in the summer. It's very easy to justify a sale of someone like Bruno Guimaraes because of what it can do for FFP or PSR, whatever you want to call it, the 100 million release clause, the profit, the time to rebuild, the new era, all that sort of thing. But a player like that, and a player like Gordon, and a player like Isak, who's been linked with Arsenal, they're not very easy to replace. It's not Football Manager, it's not FIFA. It's very, very difficult to get players on that level who gel. And Newcastle are all about the personality, which is what initially caused the question about Anthony Gordon, because was he going to fit in with the team? Honestly, he's been a revelation this season on and off the pitch. The way he's handled the media, the maturity he's shown. If you watch the overlap with Gary Neville, you really see what Anthony Gordon's developed into. And I think that he's become Newcastle's most important player in many ways. I've probably made that case for Isak, and I've probably made that case for Bruno Guimaraes as well. But I think Gordon is the player you saw with the penalty that he won yesterday. He's the only player in the squad that really offers something slightly different. He takes players on. He's willing to run at players, whereas everybody else is very much has their job and does what they do for Eddie Howe's tactics. Where I think that Gordon has that sort of ingenuity, that ability, that confidence to run at somebody. And that makes such a difference to Newcastle's attack, particularly out wide. And coupled with Alexander Isak, who everybody knows about his ability. Those three players I can't speak highly of enough for what they've done this season. But I think Gordon's improvement is a massive reason why Newcastle have been able to maintain such a competitive element, despite everything I mentioned before about the injuries and the pressure on Howe and everything. Maybe we've all been a little bit wrong about this season, but given how close Newcastle are to the top four, yes, it's completely out of the question. I'm not saying that they're going to get into the top four, but if they'd won a couple of games across the season, and the very winnable games that they've not won this season, at Luton, at Bournemouth, home to Forest, there's so many games that you would expect Newcastle to win when they've been at their lowest ebb, and that's why the questions were there. They also deserve massive credit for showing that that last season wasn't a fluke, and at times this season they've been at that level, and they've been able to play not particularly well and end up scoring 4 or 5 goals in the game because they're so prolific, because they've got these three players at the top of the pitch who can make such a difference. So there's a lot to build on this summer for Newcastle. The most important thing this summer is keeping those three players and getting players back fit. I really do wonder whether we've just misjudged this season quite a lot, and whether the discourse around this season has been quite harsh. But Newcastle are showing just how good of a side they are, and next season, if they can plug a couple of holes in the squad and but most importantly, keep the three players, then they could be in for a very, very good season indeed next year. Thank you very much for joining me on this latest video. Please do let me know which backdrop you like, and also, please do let me know any questions that you have for a Q&A video that I'm doing at the end of the season as well. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.